Hello and welcome to Hero with 1,000 Potions, a gaming podcast where two 30-something gamers examine the storytelling and gameplay of popular and niche RPGs. It's like a book club with talent trees. This is Season 1, and we are talking about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, released on the Nintendo Switch in 2020. My name is Tyler, and I am joined by my friend Nate. We invite you to join us on this adventure by playing Xenoblade alongside these episodes, in which we will scrutinize and appreciate Xenoblade chapter by chapter. This episode, we are getting into Chapter 1.
Getting into the next scene, I believe we are at Colony 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are now playing as Shulk. And he is a lab technician for researching ancient artifacts. I don't, there's a certain vagueness to it, but not in any way that's obfuscating or that you're confused, you know? It's pretty straightforward. And so he actually has the Monado in his lab. There's also several, it looks like ancient technology littered around the area. And then it seems like Colony 9, it's got a very vertical structure to it. Even though the people don't live vertically, there's a lot of components that look like these giant things arcing into the sky. Which I don't know if those were built by people or just utilized by people, and they were always part of the machine on which they sit. That is not completely clear at the moment.
That's a good question. Yeah, are the structures that the colony are built on, or is it man-made, or could it be from another technology, another titan? There's a lot of anothers, and we've hardly scratched the surface here. I'm glad you mentioned about the verticalness of Colony 9, because that becomes very apparent as you walk in from the field in which you start taking control of Shulk. Going into Colony 9, it looks like we're in the bottom of this enormous red rock ravine, and there's a lake at the bottom, and then there are pillars upon which the city lives, and then there are other structures pointing up at the sky as well. And if you look up into the skybox, you can see that these rock cliffs stretch quite a ways up, and at certain parts of Colony 9, I could see even more rock rising up from atop that. And that was when I felt the way you described about how, okay, now I kind of do feel like maybe I could be living on the back of a giant. Where most of these towns, maybe I'm just inundated in starter villages that are very flat and rolling grassy, right? But this one, and it certainly has grass, but I do feel like I could be, that the entire first town and greater quest hub area could be how do I describe, like from inside, like the leg or the shin, an outcropping of a titan's extremity, and when I look up, I could be looking all the way up its thigh or something like that. I definitely felt a sense of place that was very original for me. Maybe I don't play enough AAA games, but Colony 9 did feel very, very original to me.
Yeah, and I don't, again, both of us having not played the original edition of Xenoblade, I can't speak to how well these presentation qualities came off in the first pass of the game, but for me, everything is very crisp and beautiful, and it creates like this serene feeling. The enemies do not have like aggro to them starting out here, so you're not threatened by anything. You're kind of free to explore as you see fit, and so there is definitely, this is where I might dip into my Kingdom Hearts analogy again. They start you out with this really good kind of slice of life feeling of you're on maybe a patrol or a little trip of your own. You've got your buddy Rain with you, or Ryan. I think it's Ryan, pronounced Ryan. And if you do get into combat with something, they kind of introduce slight, I would say, MMO mechanics that were at this point kind of seeping their way into standard RPGs. I don't know what started it. I think, to my recollection, I'm sure anyone out there who's played every game ever would be able to correct me on this. To my recollection, when Final Fantasy XI transitioned into, they were making Final Fantasy XII, that came with the stipulation of the Final Fantasy series now had more traditional, like, tank healer mechanics to them in some degrees, whereas back in the day you might have a priest and a knight, but they didn't necessarily take all the damage and do all the healing. There would be tertiary ways to potions and different things, or in the case of like Final Fantasy 6 and 7, anyone can choose to be a healer or throw a heal at some point. So
Right.
I'd say an attempt to not have the RPG genre stagnate. Previous games kind of took up the model of anyone can do everything. This game seems to be dialing a little bit more into each character has their role. And so you kind of have signature abilities. You have a character that looks like more of a heavy fighter, of he's going to be the one taking the damage. Shulk eventually gets a heal spell of that can help out with that. He shouldn't be the one getting hit. So it seems like to me, just even getting a start and running around in some of these first battles, I'm getting introduced to more of traditional RPG mechanics than the kind of freeform things that kind of came about the late 90s, early 2000s. I might be a little bit more in the camp of enjoying that, where people have set roles than just the kind of free-for-all RPG style. So that's pretty satisfying for me to see. Kind of, it gives me a sense of like groundedness right away playing the game.
We meet Shulk, and he's with Ryan, and we are scrapping some junk in a field.
Yeah.
And I'm forgetting what it is that's drawing us back home. I think we found something interesting.
I think it's machine parts, that a monster inside of the machine part. That machine part they were saying was going to make good armor for soldiers back home.
Sure. Okay. So we cross the field into Sector 9 proper. There's a little
Colony 9.
Colony 9. Oh, Sector 9, like it's Midgar. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I'm probably gonna do that one or two more times.
That's fine.
It's a little overwhelming at first because Sector. Oh my goodness. Colony 9 is a big place. There are quest givers all over, and we're introduced to an affinity system. Oh my goodness, there's a day and night system too, and these systems are like play into each other differently. For example, different NPCs and different creatures are active at day or night. Now you can adjust day or night on a whim from the menu, from the game menu there. But it's interesting that you're kind of playing playing it like an MMO where we're talking to people, and they have quests they want to give, and some of them are fetch quests, some of them are kill a monster quests, some of them are gain drops from creatures that you kill. Some of them are elite monster kills, and I've died quite a bit to them, thinking I can take them.
I tried, yeah.
Oh my
Me too.
gosh, I've died so much. In Chapter 1, I've died so much. And some of them were spectacular. Well, I'll get into that when we're there. Oh, and there's a barter system that NPCs have as well, where there's an option to kind of check let's say some NPCs have their own little shop. You access their shop, but they don't want money. They will trade you something for another item of particular value that they find valuable themselves. Yeah. I haven't picked up all the drops at this point, and I've traded what were probably really nice things for things that I just kind of pick up off the ground a little bit later. Go, hey, I think I need that for that quest. I assume maybe you did too, but kind of went around and gathered up some quests before I marched over to the military base / Shulk laboratory section. What did you do once you got into Colony 9? I have to be deliberate when I say this now. Yeah. Colony 9 proper.
I am a completionist, so I grab every quest and I try and do as much as I possibly can until it becomes apparent, like, oh, hey, this game does have party members and I'm just one guy. I probably can't kill this thing by myself. I did absolutely everything I could try to do. I upgraded my gear to the most expensive stuff Shulk could wear, and then I started doing more quests until it was pretty much those elite ones were the only ones he couldn't do. But I went through several day-night cycles, just kind of doing everything I could do before going to the main objective, because that's kind of my play style for all games like this. I'll say kind of just a short little tangent here of I got into that town, and again I was having yet another flash of Kingdom Hearts feelings, and the reason for that is I looked it up. A good portion of this game's music is done by Yoko Shimomura. She goes all the way back to doing Street Fighter 2's music, but she was lead composer for the Kingdom Hearts series, and so she's very good at these very serene, calm, inviting little melody that just makes you feel right at home being in that town. All of those elements of just kind of doing slice of life tasks, helping out small people or whatever, it really reminded me of the first segment of Kingdom Hearts 2, which gave me a little bit of a premonition. Even if I didn't know I was skipping ahead here, I'll say that it gave me the feeling that I did want to do everything I could here before I progressed the story, because just like Kingdom Hearts 2, the shit might hit the fan at some point here, and I don't know if I'm gonna have the ability to revisit some of these. It was just a weird feeling I had because there's a similar experience in that game where all of that comfort they offer you at the start while you're learning the simpler systems of the game, they tear away from you at the end of that opening segment. So I felt very compelled to set right everything I could in town before going to the lab.
Cool. I did a lot of quests, but not all of them. Like I played all the way to chapter 2. I haven't purchased a single equipment item for any of my party members yet. I've gotten some drops, and they're marginally better. I'm sure there are better ones in the shop. I've certainly looked at the shop and thought, I think I want to save my pennies. But one thing that dropped for me pretty quickly on, and tell me if this is the case for you, but I got a really good weapon for Ryan right away.
I don't know. I don't think that happened for me.
Oh, it was noticeable. Like I looked it up. You can do the stat comparison, and it is 1.5 to twice as strong attack damage power as his default weapon, and that's quite a bit. And I thought, well, I don't know if that was a rare drop or what, but he ended up with something pretty serious right away, which was neat.
I did some investigation with what you could trade to people and everything. I didn't really get to everyone, but there's some hidden gems there too. If you go talk to some of the soldiers or like kind of on the far end of town where they're stationed, I think one of them had a piece of gear that was pretty expensive, and it's like they value some of those monster parts that like mean nothing to me pretty highly. So I played around with that a little bit to kind of upgrade and see what I could do. That's something where you told me about your Final Fantasy Tactics run where you can't really buy gear, you either have to steal it, but essentially it sounded like a more organic gameplay focused way of acquiring things instead of just having currency and then spending that currency. I go back and forth on that because, there's probably some Xenoblade challenges out there we could revisit sometime to like make it a little bit more. You're spending your time more out in the world than you are in menus in towns in order to make your character stronger. I might value that more because I got a significant power spike from just going to the shop and spending all my money.
So there are more than just Homs in Colony 9.
I have a note here that Choo Choo is back.
Choo Choo's back. I have a note here. Oh my goodness, my first Affinity System relationship is a Clefairy wearing a purple cabbage leaf.
That is true as well, yes.
I don't know. I assume when you first, probably didn't have to be the first, that particular NPC, but the first NPC you could have a reputation system.
Yes.
Mine happened to be with the little Choo Choo Pokemon character.
Yes.
And I thought that was amusing and definitely worth writing down.
Yeah, I think my first person I got affinity with was some sort of young woman working at like a fruit stand or something. I'd have to go back and look.
Sure. Anything noteworthy or exciting or a memorable moment when you were doing any of that questing?
For me, it just this is another little bit of a tangent here, but as far as would I make a game today that has just chocked full of side quests, I think this era of moving on from the traditional JRPG, I think the best thing about these side quests is that they hide the grind, so to speak. So you're never in this place where you feel like, I want to be level 10 so I can do this, or I want to be level 15 so I can do that. What it does is you go get all those quests and you're just going to be level 10. You're going to get to a place where you feel strong enough to do what you want to do through doing activities. There's a balance of does the giant quest line in and of itself become a grind where if they make too many, but it's different than the feeling of like running around in circles on a world map. Recently replaying through Final Fantasy VIII in the last couple years with the HD edition that released of that, there was definitely segments where I'm just running in a circle on a map because my GFs need AP, and it's like this game, I like that seems like it's not going to be the case. I'm going to have everything I need through doing the side activities. It makes me wonder how the game's tuned for somebody who skips all of that. But for me, I was enjoying essentially having it be a no grind game. I always knew where I was going and what I was doing. Now, as far as the side quests themselves, if they're of any value to me, the affinity system, I'll have to see how that plays out. If there's rewarding moments that come from that, because this was definitely definitely a staple of the MMOs where it's like we can just chalk this game full of content by slapping a tag on a mob we have out in the world and then having a small little text box that explains why you're killing that mob. It's very simplistic. It's easy for a programmer to make dozens of these and have the game have quote unquote content. But kind of after playing these types of games for 20 years, 15, 20 years, when I play a game like the recent God of War kind of reboot game, that game has side quests where each and every one of them kind of has a moment where it enriches your characters or it teaches you something about the world that actually matters.
Kill his own father? Over some treasure? Seems so greedy.
Remember what I told you, boy. Assume nothing.
Well, sure. He didn't seem like a great father, but...
You only know half the story.
So I'm stuck in a place of like, I like the system, but I also don't know that I'm getting anything of real, like, hard value out of that. Like 3 to 4 hours, I think you and I both spent catching up on all that stuff. Maybe there's a little bit of obtuseness there where we probably could do all of it in about an hour or two. We were running around figuring the game out and everything. So
yeah, little testing.
So it kind of begs the question, in games where you create your character, like if I make a paladin, there's value in doing the quests because I get to say, you know, the paladin did this because he wants the town to be a better place for all. Whereas my rogue might do it for the cash, or my warlock might do it for a powerful trinket that they get or something. Whereas Shulk, for example, he is not my character, and he has a very clearly defined character that the game is telling me who he is. So for him not to help the townspeople in need seems like I would be missing on his character. I wouldn't be choosing to just be an asshole for that hour and a half because he's going to get into a cutscene 10 minutes after that where he's a kind and caring and loving guy. So it really is kind of for me the experience of when you're playing the game and doing these side quests, you have to take on the role of immersing yourself in the character instead of really asking yourself, why am I doing this? And luckily for me, I am a completionist, so it works. That's kind of my observation on just chalking the game full of, especially the quests where somebody asks you like, hey, can you run this fruitcake across town and give it to this guy? And it's like, this town is not that big, lady. I think you can do it. I believe in you, you know? But anyway, so that's more so a commentary of all games. I like to see a little bit more intentionality. Any type of content I do, I want to, when they give me moments of feeling like satisfaction of like, this is why I'm here. I like that. So that's something I'm hoping where maybe the affinity system pays off a little bit more. Maybe I get to know some of these people after engaging in their lives several times.
Yeah, that'll be helpful. I'm also getting the sneaking suspicion that each of our quest hubs, we're going to be inundated with quests. We'll always see a quest where we're going to kill 2 of any enemy around it and pick up a lot of this little glowing thing on the ground and 3 of these little glowing things on the ground, reward us with experience. But it doesn't, right now, my vibe is that it's not going to be very enriching to the world, but I'm looking forward to being corrected on that. I'm looking forward to seeing what community affinity system is going to pay off for us. But right now, it seems like a lot of work. I like a clean quest log. I don't want this the burden, the emotional burden of the fruitcake lady expecting fruitcake to be, run across town. I would like to keep a clean quest log, but there's lots of quests. NPCs have multiple quests, and they have lots. And once you turn one in, they have a follow-up quest sometimes too. And so I guess I'm gonna have to get used to being useful to the townspeople as I go. But anyways, that's kind of been my vibe here. Oh, funny thing that happened to me while I was questing was, so I'm in the water, swimming around. Firstly, I didn't know you could jump until I discovered you could jump, and then I didn't know you could swim until I accidentally discovered you could swim. And so now I'm swimming, and I'm kind of like, oh, I wonder what's over at this shore here, and I'm left triggering, I think it is, to kind of get sights on these enemies that I'm seeing, and they're like level 72, level 73, and I'm like level 5, 6, 7. And as I'm seeing this, I'm going, oh no. So I stop. I don't pause my game. I stop to take a note. And while I'm taking the note, a dialogue box appears on my screen to introduce me to the concept of elite monsters. And I'm going, oh, that can't be good. And an elite level 72, 73 fish monster hit me for 3,600 damage, and I turn into a shaft of light. I went back to the nearest monument or whatever.
Did the game suggest easy mode to you at that point?
Not at that point, but they would eventually. They did suggest it once, and I declined because I'm a man's man. I'm a man's RPGer, and I can take the hits. I play a MOBA. I can be okay with being bad for a little while. That's an interesting mechanic too, that you can just kind of play for the story if you chose to.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if that's a new thing or if that was in the original, because that's kind of a modern thing. A lot of the Final Fantasy re-releases have like a just be God mode so that you can just go through the cutscenes essentially. And I'm not interested in that. It's I don't know how to explain it, but it's like part of understanding these characters is experiencing some of their adversity. So if you're just kind of killing everything in one hit, it loses a little bit of the satisfaction.
I know what you mean.
One other, you kind of brought up that people have multiple quests. It also seems like there's a limitation of the system of having quests with multiple objectives, because you'll run into somebody where they will give you back to back to back kill quests for monsters, and it's like, in my head, I would think, why don't you just make one quest that is to kill 3 of this, 3 of that, 3 of the other thing? But it seems like there's some sort of limitation where a quest, like the way it's set up in their database, it can only have one objective, which is kill this thing twice. And a lot of those quests, it's interesting too, because it's like, oh, these things have become a danger to our area, go kill 2 of them. And it's like, I can look out there right now and see 20 of them. How is 2 gonna help? And so a bit too much of an abstraction for me of like, this isn't actually clearing the area, it's just kind of a video gamey chore. I like games where they have a little bit more progression. I think of the game Okami, where you run around. I don't know if you've ever played it.
I downloaded it on Switch, but I haven't played very much of it.
Yeah, well, when you do stuff in that game, places that you've achieved goals stay transformed and stay changed for the better permanently. And so you get that satisfaction of, yes, not only have I done every quest in the area, but look at my surroundings. This place looks great. Again, that's because I think this game comes off of the back of MMOs, where you can't really remove an enemy source completely off the map because somebody might need the beaks that they drop or the feathers or whatever it is. They might need them till the end of time for some reason, and so you can't really get rid of everything. But I wish we could see a little bit more of that, of like, yeah, this place is a mess, let's fix it up, let's get some of these monsters out of here. So again, you're kind of having to suspend your disbelief that what you're doing actually matters, even though visually it doesn't.
I like the teleportation system. I like how you unlock a piece of a map by arriving at its centerpiece feature. It could be a town square, it could be a military plaza, it could be Makeout Point at the top of the hill,
yes,
or something like that. And you can teleport to it for free whenever you like, and I think that's pretty neat. I like how fast travel's pretty dang fast.
Yes, very convenient, and it allows them to make more expansive maps because they don't have to take in the consideration of how much of a pain in the ass is this. And we find out about a mechanical armor that has crashed from lack of, wouldn't you know it, ether. There's a lack of ether energy to get the thing started up. I think that's the next real event that gets us kind of on the road, if I remember correctly.
How does it go exactly? I remember the first time we enter the military district, we meet this Waluigi-looking guy.
Yeah, Waluigi.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a, let's say, a captain in the Colony 9 militia. I don't know precisely, and I'm forgetting his name, but he looks exactly like Waluigi, and he's berating these troops, or his fellow militiamen, about that machine. But my biggest takeaway from that little cutscene was his exaggerated arm movements. He's shaking his fists at the sky and pumping them down into his chest area, and it's like he's doing jumping jacks with like just completely clenched fists and a snarl on his face, and he's chewing these folks out.
The first time we meet Fiora she is actually in Dunban's house, and she is helping him with, she brought him, I want to say it's like soup or something. He is in bed with a screwed up arm. And I remember hearing this takes place 1 year after the last time we saw Dunban with the Monado in his hand. So he has got you can see his right arm is scarred kind of all the way up. And so he's laying in bed and he needs assistance, apparently, to the point where she is helping her brother because he apparently has a lasting injury from the use of the Monado. And so he says that he's grateful or whatever, but he's going to get back out there. He'll be just fine. He'll be recovered in no time. She is on her way to deliver some food to Shulk in his lab. So I think that's the first time we meet her. And they kind of joke about either her food not being good or cold whenever she gets around to delivering it to Shulk. He's like, but Shulk won't actually tell me that it's bad. He'll say it's great regardless. Whereas she values the fact that Dunban will just tell her the food is bad. So.
I remember picking up on that too, where Shulk has a hard time giving Fiora a candid opinion about something. It isn't just about the suit. Something else happens where he gives her like the correct answer, but not like his answer, like a personal answer. And I remember that being amusing. I think it was when we noticed the big cutscene in which flashbacks and funny things like that. But I don't know if we're there just yet. Maybe we are. I did go back and rewatch the Touch the Monado cutscene, and I have a play-by-play of all of that. About Dunban, oh my goodness, yes. So we kind of skipped on that. Dunban, well, he's here, and so is Dixon, the Gomer Pyle guy. Mumkar, thank you.
And Mumkar's got big claws. Dunban's got the sword. I forget what Dixon's weapon is. I think there's a weird dichotomy of everyone still uses, like, to fight the machines. A lot of people are using things that look mechanical in nature themselves. Something weird going on there. I don't know if Bionis or the people of Bionis, like, they have a lot of machinery in their life. Obviously, Shulk's lab is chock full of machinery. Do they make the connection that it's like, hey, machines, mechs, killing us, you know,
hope so.
Because that was kind of a theme of Final Fantasy X. Machines kill us, so the Church of Yevon, we don't have anything to do with machines. Machina is bad. I kind of wonder, do the people of Colony 9 and of Bionis make that distinction of, if it isn't the Victorian clockwork machines, it's fine.
I have that Dixon uses a rifle.
Oh, right.
Or he did in the cutscene.
Could be a less mechanical contraption, because rifles can be fairly simple. Have you played around with the gear appearance system at all?
No.
It's pretty interesting. I ended up just kind of clothing people in their default gear. But when you equip gear, you can equip it, but you can also, there's slots for just picking what your gear looks like aside from what you're actually wearing. Everybody comes with a beach party outfit, if that's your thing.
I did not notice that. I should play with that next time I sit down with it.
Shulk's got swim trunks and Crocs for shoes.
Oh boy.
It's pretty interesting. So
okay, I'm sure.
Fun little side note.
I'm sure Fiora's is very popular. Okay, so eventually we get 3 characters into Shulk's lab. Shulk, Ryan, and Fiora. Ryan grabs the Monado out of its holding place, but it activates. The holographic device above the hilt flashes on. Another piece nearby kind of pops out like a CD tray, like disengages, like opens around the hologram. A rune, or maybe it is a kanji bit, appears in the center, and a blue beam of light comes out of the Monado, and the thing is taking him on a ride like a bucking bronco all around the laboratory. Ryan appears to be unable to let go of it. It's flying all around. It's just full of energy. It's just burst with energy, and Shulk and Fiora are in awe and kind of in terror because this weapon is out of control in this rather confined space. As it's thrashing around, it slices through this console that poor Shulk has, and this beam of light also passes through the leg of Fiora, although she's okay. When that happens, everything kind of calms down again. The beam retracts it back into the sword, and Shulk is like, what is going on here? Why did you grab that? And Ryan kind of like scratches the back of his head and he says, I don't know, it looked kind of fun, or some sort of like awful dopey excuse.
Well, I think there's an undertone or maybe it's an overtone too, with specific mention, I can't remember, but I got the feeling that because Dunban is out of commission, Ryan is kind of taking on the role of he wants to be the hero. That if something were to ever happen to the colony or an attack of some kind, I get the impression that Ryan feels compelled to take up that role. I'm the tough guy. I'm the guardian. In combat, he takes on the role of the guardian while Shulk pokes away at the enemy. I get the feeling that, again, maybe there wasn't an overt dialogue about it, or maybe it's a subtext I'm picking up on, but I get the feeling that he doesn't believe that Dunban's just going to recover and come back and wield the Monado like good old times, and that someone else is going to need to step up to do that, and he thinks he's that guy.
Mm-hmm. I did not get that vibe, but I can understand that. Maybe that was why he grabbed it. The sword isn't exactly choosing him, because what happens next is Shulk seizes the Monado from Ryan, and as he's speaking with him, he bangs the hilt against the back of a console, and the thing activates again, but this time something very different happens.
Look at you, worthless without the Monado.
Until I've scrapped each and every one of you!
So, of course I want to get my revenge!
Your blade, it did not cut deep enough.
No!
Shulk's eyes flash with a ball of light, explodes out of his eyes, and then we're treated to a series of hypercut shots of people and things, and then there are 4 lines spoken over the course of it. One of them says, "Look at him, worthless with the Monado." Another person says, "Until I scrapped each and every one of you." I think that was the lady sniper. Third one, "Of course I want to get my revenge." And the fourth one, "Your blade, it did not cut deep enough." And I think that was coming from the Mechon. Shulk stops having his eyes flash with light, and he goes, thought this was a bit of comedy. He goes, "Ryan, did you see anything when you grabbed the sword?" And he has a very pedestrian answer. He goes, "Yeah, a blue beam of light came out the end of it." You know, something that everybody saw in that room. You didn't get the profound expositional assault that Shulk did. I had to laugh because he just had this very sweet and honest answer that was just completely wrong.
And I think that's clearly drawing. If he had just said no, we'd be wondering, okay, did Shulk experience memories? Was he shown something by the sword? Was this? But I think that kind of clarification shows that Ryan interacting with the sword does nothing. Shulk interacting with the sword gave him the visions. And so that means the sword kind of talking to Shulk, if that makes sense. Instead of just maybe like the trauma or heightened anxiety of that event kind of triggering something in Shulk, I think it's a direct communication is implied. And that's why they went to the lengths of asking him, "Hey, did you see anything?" And he could have just, like you said, just said no. But I think that's what they're trying to draw, is that the sword is the one showing those things to Shulk. If I were to take a guess, I would say maybe these are past users of Monado or Monado-like powers that have imprinted some sort of memories or heightened moments onto the sword, and that there's a specific, we've dealt with this in other Xeno games, but essentially there's special people who have capabilities of doing things that regular people are not capable of. So maybe Shulk has we're not aware of it yet, but Shulk has some sort of gift to be able to use this item or heritage or whatever, and that these other people we're seeing are also people who have used or interacted with the Monado and share that same legacy. Now, I could be totally wrong about that. That's just what I'm personally taking from that scene. There's not much information to glean from the individual snippets. We haven't seen these places. We haven't seen these people. There aren't any real dots to connect. I think their kind of purpose is to show that maybe Shulk isn't just some random guy, and he's a piece of something bigger.
Oh yeah, right. Child of Destiny. Maybe.
Yep.
We don't know yet. There's a lot we don't know. Right. After that, we put the Monado back, and we kind of bookmark that. We don't investigate it any further.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're sent on this errand to acquire some ether power cells. They are at the back end of a nearby cave. Fiora's coming with.
Yes. Well, she wasn't initially. She meets meets us at the cave. We forget something, and then she had to give it to us, and she's like, look at you guys, you're pathetic. You forgot something already. I guess I have to come with. But we're gathering these power cells because of that mech suit that crashed into a residence building and then was out of power. And it was just doing a training exercise. There wasn't any fall play. That's crashing in the building, doesn't have the energy to get up, so we need to have somebody go fetch these ether cells. I think the implication is that ether power or ether cells are not something that just regular humans with their little steampunk village or labs are capable of harvesting or collecting on their own. Whether it's explicitly stated at the end of this cave dungeon or it's stated at the beginning, I think there's an implication that this is a technology that we don't fully understand or have the capability of reproducing, but we know how to use it. We know how to make machines that can interact with it. So ether, we're kind of familiar with that and what that means. I'm going to guess it's something a little different in the Blade series than Saga or Gears series.
Yeah, maybe. Right, well, on our way in the cave, we haven't talked very much about the animals and the creatures we fought. There are armadillo types, there are bat types, but the one that I laugh about is the rabbit with the fist in its tail.
Oh, yeah.
That's
and
pretty...
a big chunk of wood.
Yeah, sometimes they got clubs and like, oh my goodness. That's a scary... I mean, for an innocent animal, I mean, you know, in a typical RPG, you might fight slimes and goblins and these more rudimentary, reductive sort of creatures. And for a starter creature to fight a rabbit with a clubbed fist in its tail is pretty fascinating. And then, of course, they're wielding weapons, and so you have, like, I won't call them evolutions, but leveled up variations of that creature are interesting. This thing has weapon that it can swing at me now. And looking at that from a distance, I really did have to stop and go, oh my gosh, that looks like that could be a tough fight. From an immersive storytelling perspective, that was pretty neat. They're in the cave too. There are other creatures in the cave I'm not immediately remembering. The cave wasn't exceptionally long. There's an elite in there or two.
The cave had like a side path that you have to take in order to dodge a giant threatening monster. I thought it was interesting that it's like you said, it's a very short dungeon. I'm not sure if later we'll get some longer ones. Maybe it's just a short introductory one. One observation is that if this game originally came out in 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, that was right around the time that people were complaining about Final Fantasy and RPGs in general getting too linear. So we'll have to see. This one has a couple little branching paths and curves to go around. Again, this was also pretty linear and straightforward to me. And if you were playing games in this era, it would have been a while, at least JRPGs, since you've experienced a true dungeon with just like rooms and floors and paths and different things that just, you know, you get lost or you have to consult the map on several occasions. This is definitely an era where you're running down a long hallway, getting into a measured, controlled amount of fights, and then having a cutscene kind of thrown in the middle. This one was very easy for me because now we have enemies that will attack you on sight. There's a couple out in the field that I found before, but for the most part, everything was passive. But in here, things will attack you on sight. With my completionism, I was like probably way higher level than I needed to be and over geared, and everything was pretty easy to take care of all the way through. And there was even some quest objectives in there, and I think an elite quest, a named monster or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm quite as geared as you were, but I found it pretty easy as well. When I'm fighting, I try to issue the heal spell as usefully and early as possible because in some fights I'm going to need it again, and so I want to use it as much as I can. And so I am feeling some tension about my tank's health in that regards. But for the most part, it's been a pretty simple tank and spank. I like that some of the abilities are effective from the side or the back and those sort of nuances. And then there's like a Trinity ability there where once everyone's kind of limit bars sort of add up, not precisely in the same way as Final Fantasy VII is. And then there's also a 3-part stun chain formula where one person issues I think it's called a topple effect, and then another person has a follow-up effect that is only effective for the window of time in which they are, quote, toppled, and then the third person implements a third ability on top of the second one, and all together, I assume you'll do like a big hunk of damage, or I think they get properly stunned. I do look out for those little progress bars to issue those other abilities. Those have been my fights. At the end of the cave, we arrive at an outcropping that kind of looks over Sector 9. and we find those...
Colony 9.
And we find those ether power cells. Nate, what happens next?
It looks like a security system of some kind. We are attacked by a boss battle. Kind of looks like a mechanical eyeball with like a little bit of an apparatus around them, capable of floating in the air. I killed them so fast that I'm not sure if they had any greater mechanics to be aware of or avoid, because they pretty much died, I'd say a minute max. I'd have to look. Yeah, so we have our first little taste of a boss battle, and if I remember correctly, they tell you use your team tactics, pull up the little window of, focus here or do what you like, whatever.
Right.
What you were saying about some of those abilities that chain into each other, it's like, maybe I'm missing something. I don't see a specific opportunity to command people to use their ability when you need them to, unless I'm missing it, because the orders wheel is just generic. It's like, hey, focus this target that I'm focusing on. It's like, so unless I'm missing an ability to switch to other people, I feel like I've pressed every button. Anyway, yeah, so I'm curious on if there's a better way to make that happen, or if I'm just missing them chaining into the rest of the abilities, because I'm playing as Shulk, and he's got the first on the stack. I might need to look into that a little bit more.
I think Ryan has the first, and the stacking that I've noticed is when Ryan initiates it, it's pretty small and easy to miss. A little progress bar starts loading above the enemy target's health bar. It's like up and to the left. I think it is easy to miss, and as it's loading, that's when I initiate Shulk's follow-up ability, and whether Fiora follows up on hers, I'm not paying attention, because very much like you said, although I'm not as geared as you, I'm spanking these guys pretty easily. They were not a challenging boss fight. I don't remember any particular abilities. It was really just allocating resources and focus firing, and eventually they cleaned up pretty fast.
So we do get our ether power cells. And I think they do make some comment of that the facility you're currently standing on at the end of this cave on the top of this mountain is not a creation of the Homs, at least to their more recent history, to where they're aware of. This predates them. So if we dial back to what I said at the beginning of our chat about the sword in the ground, giving me the feeling of more of an ancient technology than a modern day, the greatest minds have developed that sword, I'm getting confirmation of that same feeling I had at the beginning with the fact that Shulk's saying, we don't even understand how this facility works, it just does, and we come up here to get the material. One quick thing I think we glossed over that I will mention that we touched on but didn't resolve. There is a section where we're hanging out with Fiora. If you visit locations with certain people, you can have a nice little chat with them. Utilizing that, there is a scene where there's debris falling off of the top of Bionis's body, and because you're deep in this valley between all the mountains and cliffs and everything, the debris falling is going to fall on your village. The previous towers we were talking about end up lighting up and shooting down this debris, saving the people below. So we now know what those towers do. In this instance, I still haven't gotten an answer on whether those are Hom-made towers or if they predate them as a piece or function of the Bionis himself. Because if you remember back to Xenogears, there's a lot of stuff that at face value comes off as one thing, and then later you find out, oh, this was originally a piece of something else. Like, for example, the Bart's giant ship. For him, that's like his whole family's legacy. That's the secret that they've been hiding their whole life. In the intro video, there are dozens and dozens of those little like UFO ships on the Eldritch.
Oh, so, sure. Yeah, the Fort Jasper.
Yeah, so these components that we're seeing in Colony 9, for the people there, their whole lives revolve around maintaining and upkeeping this thing, but this could be like one of thousands of facilities, or or at least 9
Sure.
that perform this function of protecting the surface of this body. But we don't know if the people there built it or if it was part of the body naturally. That's interesting to figure out, or to look forward to, I should say.
Feel the same. I'm looking forward to getting to chapter 2. There are relationship-based cutscenes with very deliberate locations. In Colony 9, that you can have with your party members, and I'm really, really bad at them. I assume the game wants me to use my context clues and paying attention to the story to know what the correct answers are, because they prompt you with these. They're like, Shulk, you remember when I raced up here? It was, why did I do that again? And it's like a romantic answer and another answer, and maybe there's a third one, and I always pick wrong. And I don't know if part of me says, well, hey, I'm part of the story too, and I can help explain the story. But no, there is a correct answer, and and it's consequential too. It's not just, we don't just gloss over it. Your relationship meter might slide in the wrong direction if you misremember an important moment with a special friend there, and I've done that a lot. And I think I've only been part of 2 relationship-based cutscenes, one between Fiora and another between Ryan, and those are interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how them playing out, and I plan on getting better at them because I want my relationships to slide in the right direction.
I got them all right, so I don't consider myself a natural at stuff like that. I'm actually terrible at them in Fire Emblem for Switch. I happen to get these ones right just by kind of like a process of elimination of which one could or couldn't be true and which one absolutely would kind of have to be true. I can't remember the exact details, but I remember sitting there and thinking for a while. But what I did not know, like you said, starting out that conversation, I did not know of whether, am I trying to remember actual facts as determined by the game, or am I retroactively deciding what my history is as a external player? No matter which one I choose, does history just change to make me right? Or am I actually going to say something and she's going to say, hey, dumbass, that's not how it happened? So I didn't get a confirmation in my using of those because I kept getting them right. So your account of things has helped me realize that it is the case of there is an objective truth, and I'm not retroactively deciding what happened via my answers as the player.
They will correct you.
Sounds good.
Then what'd you fucking ask me for? If you knew the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's not an appropriate answer either.
The delivery of as you know dialogue of they already know their history, but the player wasn't there. So we got to find a way to, without a flashback or an additional cutscene, we've already got this environment here and we've got voice actors. Let's just go for it. The cafe scene, I like to call it, where 2 characters are sitting in a cafe and they recount the events they just happened outside an hour ago. But because those events would require a budget of filming various scenes and crazy things happening, it's a lot cheaper to just film them talking about it in a cafe. That's something that video games love to do because it's like, well, we can't create that whole environment, so let's just have people talk about something. I hope the affinity system delves into that a little bit more too, because I would love to learn some details about townspeople characters as well, instead of just that they need pies delivered to them.
That concludes our exploration of Xenoblade Chronicles Chapter 1. Join us next time for Chapter 2, where the relative peace for Shulk, Ryan, and Fiora, and the people and choo-choos of Colony 9 is suddenly broken. If you are playing Xenoblade along with us, we invite you to finish Chapter 2 before crushing that next episode. We are Nate and Tyler, and this is a gnarly guitar solo.